Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Choi, Ms. Farber, Madam Secretary, Acting Inspector General Florence Yu, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, Calanchi, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations, and dialogue in real time and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there is a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we'll move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police, Chief Choi.
Good morning and thank you. Good morning, President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Yu, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Ms. Farber. I'm going to start by commenting on categorical use of forces. So we had no categorical use of forces in the prior week. Year to date, we are at 19 officer-involved shootings in 23 and 19 officer-involved shootings in 24, which is obviously 0% difference. This time last year, we had 7 fatal shootings. This year, in 2024, we have 6 fatal shootings. I'll move on to a press conference that I attended. So on Thursday, August 15th, I participated in a press conference with the DEA, the United States Postal Inspection Services, and the United States Attorney's Office to announce the arrest of a licensed physician and a San Fernando Valley drug dealer in connection with the death of actor Matthew Perry, who suffered a fatal ketamine overdose in October of 2023. In total, 5 defendants, including 2 doctors, were charged in the matter. Bringing these individuals to justice for their role in the death of Mr. Perry required coordination, hard work, and dedication by a number of people. And I want to thank our own robbery homicide detectives and our federal partners for their patience and that hard work. On a daily basis, our officers witness firsthand the harm that these narcotics can cause, so I'm pleased that their collective efforts have led to these arrests. Next, I'll move on to the arrest made in the murder of Johnny Wachter. So on Thursday, August 15th, Central Bureau Homicide Unit, in collaboration with undercover detectives and members of our Metropolitan Division, executed multiple search warrants related to the murder of Johnny Wachter. The tragic incident occurred on May 25th when Mr. Wachter, who had just finished his shift as a bartender at a downtown bar, was shot and killed while walking to his vehicle. The dedicated efforts of our Central Bureau Homicide team have been instrumental in advancing this case. The team meticulously processed the crime scene, collecting crucial fingerprint and DNA evidence. They reviewed hundreds of hours of video and authored over 50 search warrants, which significantly contributed to identifying the 4 suspects involved in this senseless murder. The swift work of our detectives had led to the arrest of these suspects, providing a measure of justice for Johnny Wachter's family, friends, and loved ones. Their relentless pursuit of answers and commitment to solving this case exemplify our highest standards of investigative work. There was also an article about Christopher Dorner. So a firearm that was once registered to Christopher Dorner, a former Los Angeles police officer, was found in an Airbnb of 2 South American crime tourists alleged to have held up a couple at gunpoint at a Beverly Hills hotel. A luxury watch was stolen and it was valued at $1 million. I bring this up to say the department is not aware of how Mr. Dorner's weapon came in the hands of these individuals. I do want to say, and that's being investigated by federal prosecutors, but I want to say that this weapon was not a city-owned weapon and it was not his duty weapon.
Was it in the custody of the LAPD?
I'm also going to talk about the spree of 7-Eleven flash mob robberies. In recent weeks, Los Angeles has experienced a surge in the flash-style robberies affecting multiple 7-Eleven stores across the city. The most recent incidents, which occurred in the Hollywood and Rampart areas, highlight an alarming pattern of coordinated criminal activity involving large groups of suspects. On August 16th, a group of approximately 20 male individuals was reported to have carried out a series of brazen thefts in the Hollywood area. These suspects targeted 3 separate 7-Eleven locations in a single day. The method of operation was notably aggressive. In 2 of the incidents, the suspects forcibly smashed the glass doors or windows of the stores to gain entry. Once inside, they stole a variety of items without making any attempt to pay. The suspects quickly fled the scene, leaving behind considerable damage and significant losses for the store owners. In addition to the Hollywood incidents, a similar robbery was reported on the same day in the Rampart area. This incident, along with several others from the preceding weeks, exhibited comparable or similar methods of operation, suggesting a coordinated effort among these suspects. In response, Commercial Crimes Division has taken over all of these investigations, specifically our Organized Retail Theft Task Force. To address this growing concern, additional patrols have been implemented throughout the city around these businesses. Next, I'd like to talk about a significant arrest. So on August 15th, members of our Organized Retail Theft Task Force assisted Central Bureau homicide detectives with a multi-5 location search warrant. During the service of the warrant, 4 suspects were arrested related to a homicide investigation, and that's going to be the Johnny Wachter case. But our Organized Retail Theft Task Force personnel observed and seized evidence related to ongoing pharmacy and clothing store burglary investigations during the service of these warrants. Our personnel have been able to link the evidence seized to multiple recent commercial burglaries that occurred in the city. These same suspects have also been identified as engaged in crimes in the city of Lenox, Beverly Hills, Rialto, and Ontario. The investigation is ongoing to identify all suspects involved in this burglary crime ring. And again, I'm not going to comment any more on these investigations because they are linked to the homicide as well of Mr. Wachter. Moving on to crime. Crime for the week ending August 17th, 2024 compared to 2023. Year-to-date, violent crime is up 3.2% or plus 599. Property crime is down 3.8% or minus 2,572 crimes. And overall Part 1 crime is down 2.3% or minus 1,973 crimes. Violent crime arrests are down 0.9%, but Part 1 crime arrests are up 4.7%, and overall arrests are up 3.3%. Looking at our homicides compared to 2023, our homicides are down 0.5% or minus 1 year over year, and compared to 2022, we've seen a decrease of 24.2% or minus 62 homicides. Our victim shot citywide is down 86 victims, or minus 11.5% compared to 2023, and down 552 victims, or minus 27.5% compared to 2022. Our aggravated assaults are down 2.9%, or minus 362 aggravated assault victims compared to 23, and compared to 2022, our aggravated assaults are down 5.8%, or minus 750 aggravated assault victims. Again, robberies are where we're seeing our challenges in our violent crime categories. So our robberies, total robberies, are up 20.4%, or plus 1,071 robberies compared to 23. And compared to 22, our total robberies are up 5.3%, or plus 317. Where we're seeing our significant increases in robberies are Rampart, they're up 41.4%, Newton 34.3%, Southwest 39.5%, and Southeast 28.1%. We're seeing an increase in our robbery categories, more specifically in our strong arm robberies. They're up plus 44 year over year. There have been a total of 2,557 strong arm robberies, and that accounts for overall 40.4% of all of our robberies year to date. Our robberies with firearms are also up 6.5%, or plus 99 compared to 2023, and they account for 25.6% of our robberies. These robberies are primarily occurring, as mentioned in previous weeks, out in public spaces, so streets, parkways, sidewalks, roadways. But we do see a significant number of these robberies, or at least an increase in them, occurring in small convenience stores, mini marts, liquor stores, gas stations. We're seeing these as being SDs, strong arm robberies. So our focus is in both these areas. Burglaries, we heard a lot about our burglary issues last week, but I'll give you the numbers again. Burglaries are up 3.3%, or plus 305 compared to 2023, and up 2.3%, or plus 217 compared to 2022. Year to date, our commercial burglaries are up 2.2%, or plus 91, and they're down 2.5%, or minus 288 compared to 2022. Our commercial burglaries account for 43.1% of our overall burglaries. Year to date, our residential burglaries are up 4.1%, or plus 216 compared to 23, and they're up 10.2%, or plus 505 compared to 2022. Our residential burglaries, we've seen the largest increase in Operations West Bureau of 5.7% compared to 2023 numbers. Operations West Bureau's increase is led by Wilshire, who's seen an increase of 98 additional residential burglaries this year. I'm also cautiously optimistic about our motor vehicle theft and trend in that. We've continued to decrease, although we're still increased. We've gone from an increase of 9.6%, we're now at an increase of 0.4%, but we're plus 60 compared to 2023. And compared to 22, we're actually down 4.8%, minus 797 motor vehicle thefts. Our challenges where we're seeing motor vehicle thefts are squarely in the valley areas. Mission, Devonshire, Topanga, Foothill, North Hollywood, all have increases of over plus 100 motor vehicle thefts year over year. Our top stolen vehicles are still going to be the Kia Souls, the Chevy Silverados and Camaros, and the Hyundai Elantras. Our personnel strength, our sworn personnel as of August 19th is 8,810. Our civilian personnel staffing levels is at 2,596, and our reserve officers remain at 380. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now take comments or questions from the board. Vice President Shields.
Thank you, President Suthers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. During last week's meeting, you talked about increasing a visible presence in the valley to address the rise in robberies. Has that seemed to make any impact, and how has that been received by the community?
Absolutely. That's made us, all of our efforts, visible presence, non-visible presence, investigative efforts have made a significant impact. Last week in the areas that we talked about, specifically Encino. We've only seen one burglary this year. One is too many, but it's had a significant impact. What I am seeing is a slight, I believe, a trend of a slight shift. These suspects, who I believe are all related, we're seeing.
Excuse me,
Excuse me,
Chief.
Chief. Would you please allow the chief to respond to the question or take your conversation outside? Thank you. Chief, please continue.
So we've seen a little bit of an increase in activity in the Wilshire area, West LA, so I think they're moving south slightly, but we're well aware of it, and we're also shifting resources to address that.
Excellent, thank you. And is there any ability to kind of have similar resources address the rise in the strong arm robberies?
So we will use the similar strategies as we see. So although we're seeing, I believe, a shift slightly south, we haven't seen the clusters of robberies like we've seen in Encino. So I think it would be premature to say we're going to shift significant resources south, but there are resources addressing these specific issues in these areas, so.
Thank you. And one last question that I had relating to the firearm by the former law enforcement officer found in the Airbnb. Was there, you indicated that it was not a duty weapon and it was not a city-issued weapon. Is there any evidence or information as to whether or not the department ever possessed that weapon?
I don't have that. There's no evidence to suggest that. The federal entity that's investigating this at some point will determine how that weapon was acquired and where, but I don't have that information. I think it's too early for that right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche? Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
A follow-up on the burglaries, so you mentioned that 40% of those are commercial. Is that sort of year after year have been the same percentage, or is there a shift this year?
I don't know last year's percentages. I know this year, as I've been reporting, it's always roughly been about 40. It's remained fairly consistent with about 50 plus in our residential burglaries. But I can get you that information.
Okay, and then you mentioned shifting resources, or there was a mention of shifting resources. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like? Are there specific task force for burglaries, whether it's commercial or residential, and how are we bulking up those efforts?
So our major theft, so essentially our commercial crimes division, excuse me, our major crimes division has a major theft task force. There's an organized retail theft task force, all of which are working on either different series or different individuals through a variety of investigative techniques. They take on these cases that they consider a significant pattern or serial of them, similar suspects. So those resources would focus on other clusters or series as they arise, as well as visible resources like deploying the mounted unit or air support for a faster response, or helicopters to be in and around particular areas. Our senior leads increasing our volunteer patrols in neighborhoods, really creating a visible presence to deter crime, and also enhancing our investigative approach and our strategies to more quickly identify these burglars, these criminals, and bring them to justice quicker. So it's a multifaceted approach. And we're continually coordinating with our federal and other local agency partners in these task force configurations, because these criminals don't know city boundaries. They're in and out of various cities in the county. So it's important that we're all sharing information.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. So, Chief, just to follow up on the 7-Eleven flash mob robberies, you mentioned that the Organized Retail Theft Task Force is working on this as well. Are they seeing these same businesses targeted in other cities by this crew?
There are other 7-Elevens outside the city, yes.
Okay.
You know, so I will tell you just a little bit more on that. So a lot of these 7-Elevens were groups of people on bicycles, were juveniles. We're trying to figure out, there's got to be some connection, and the investigative, we'll figure this out. We just haven't done it yet.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Madam Secretary, please announce the first speaker.
The first speaker, Mistress Rayson Gidi.
Good morning, Commissioner. I heard when you announced the council public comment rules, I heard you said attacking other individual, those languages are not allowed. And then last week, I would like to request your attention and your investigation because I was attacked by a whole bunch of profanities, and then the commissioners. Russia Shield was smiling all the way, and then nobody ever stopping him in any way. So I wish if you can enforce the rule, or is that just a double standard? Because I know if I am using profanity, you will cut me off immediately. I know it. When a chief talking about the robbery up, for armed robbery up, violent crime 599 up. That's what I said 1 year ago, 2 years ago, last week. I know it. The formula is law enforcement officer number down, the criminals number up. It's forever true anywhere in the world. But it seems like we still trying to figure out why we have so many criminals on the street. One thing that hit me really hard is something that a chief will never report. I saw that video on TikTok. There's a person outside of the embassy. Outside of the federal building with his federal immigration papers and everything that was robbed by a whole bunch of juveniles. And then number one thing, those juveniles probably will never get caught. Number two, those juveniles probably will get caught and then will be released very soon, immediately, because they are juveniles. Number three, they will continue to doing those because knowing there's no punishment. The reason why I want to talk about that incident is because it hit me hard. Because 10 years ago, that's exactly what I experienced outside of 7-Eleven. I was waving my passport, my immigration papers, outside of 7-Eleven. And I was being robbed, but I was not being attacked. I was robbed by approximately $30. I was robbed by a sandwich and pizza. And then the funny thing is, there's an LAPD officer I will never forget. At the intersection, he was waiting for the light. I made an eye contact, he made an eye contact, and he drove away. That's the reason why I feel this incident attacks me hard, is because I have been through the immigration process. I have been robbed. The only difference is I was just never attacked. So that's something that we will never heard from the chief's report. That is probably because we do not have a celebrity status. If there's a celebrity getting killed, LAPD solve it in 1 month. But if there's a civilian getting robbed, getting attacked, we probably will never heard from LAPD for another 1 year or two, or never. But
Thank you.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
Good morning. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'm going to start with a Bible verse, Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Now, I've learned when a person speaks truth to power, they become the target, the enemy. This department has proven that time and again. So let's go back to when Smith reported the body-worn situation at Mission to the Bureau. Who were the people in charge of the Bureau? It was then Commander Hamilton and Assistant Chief Bobby Arcos. Now let's fast forward to today. I'm reading in a very recent news article of the Mission scandal, where the command staff there reported misconduct to the Bureau once again. And who was the Bureau? The deputy chief at the time, Hamilton. Let me remind you that there are officers being indicted, facing 10 years in prison over things that could have been prevented. If you hire Hamilton or Arcos as our next chief of police, you will just be putting the cancer right back where it was. We deserve better. This department is famous for covering up the truth. Why have we not heard anything from Choi or this commission of the protests at Foothill Station? We have the community, marching from the projects to the Foothill Station over the out of policy shooting, I believe it was out of policy, from the same gang unit that was in Mission, of an unarmed man in the back. These protesters have even vandalized the station, but we have not heard anything reported here. Foothill Station, that is. And I hear that Loose Hands Captain Lozano recently promoted another officer who was involved in an officer-involved shooting of a car full of young people. Oh yeah, that guy's from the same gang unit. These young people were unarmed. You should see the tape. This officer was put in the kit room for a year with no public contact, and Lozano promotes him to P3. Lozano promoted him over other qualified officers who do not have a bad record. This department has moved a captain for speaking truth to power, senior lead officers, and even a CPAB co-chair. Now 350 cases, as reported in the Times, admission may be compromised because the leadership of this department. There are community members protesting instead of doing what's right, you cover everything up. Lozano promotes the wrong people while he fires me in the lobby with no reason given. Lozano touches women inappropriately and makes community members cry at CPAB meetings. The promotion here at Foothill of the officer who shot at the kids, look at the video, needs to be investigated. And I'm calling for an investigation. And I want this commission to look.
The next speaker, please. Debbie Thomas.
Good morning. I'm going to speak on all items.
Okay.
Debbie Thomas with the Protective League. We have all heard the infamous workplace saying that shit rolls downhill. This means that the issues and problems that emanate or originate from the higher ranks of an organization make their way to the lower rungs of the organization. Well, at Newton Station yesterday, that phrase was literal. What we believe and what sure smelled like sewage was all over the locker room floor. It flowed into the lobby of the station, which had to be closed, and was yet another indication to our members of just how much this department cares for its police officers. But the reality is that the stink that overwhelmed Newton Station yesterday came from parts of the 10th floor of this building, Fig Plaza, where Internal Affairs keeps hammering the rank and file and finding excuses for command staff behavior. Officers having to wade through a crappy work environment is pretty much the norm these days in the LAPD. And the circle the wagons mentality with a particular commander and deputy chief just adds to the stink. Can someone here get on the PA and announce that we need to clean up aisle 10, Operations Central Bureau, Training Bureau, and Newton Station? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have caller ending 1449.
Good morning. I'd like to speak on all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Dear members of the public, Chief Choi, and police commissioners, it's time to expose the corrupt actions of the LAPPL, led by President Craig Lawley, who has launched a smear campaign against Commander Lillian Carranza, a dedicated officer who has always stood up for what's right. Today, the LAPPL released an expensive propaganda video trying to paint Carranza as incompetent for simply logging into their system with her user ID and passcode, as she's done for decades, and filling out a survey they invited her to take. Why are they targeting her now? Because Carranza filed a department complaint against Union President Craig Lawley just a month ago. This is blatant retaliation. The LAPPL is a nonprofit labor union bound by law under California Corporations Code Section 5231 to use its members' dues responsibly and in good faith. Instead, they've misused those funds for a slanderous video, a clear violation of their fiduciary duties. Misusing nonprofit funds for personal vendettas isn't just unethical, it's illegal under California Penal Code Section 506, which covers embezzlement by those in positions of trust. This isn't just a breach of trust, it's a serious crime. We're filing a formal complaint with the Attorney General and calling for the DOJ to investigate the LAPPL and their directors. And what about the LAPPL directors, Debbie and Jaretta? They're blowing through union members' dues pushing their narrative in public comments and treating their consultant team and attorneys like they're dipping into their own personal piggy bank. And they're squandering the hard-earned money of the officers they're supposed to represent. How much is this costing? Why aren't they using these funds to defend officers' use of force or officer-involved shootings? It's cronies protecting each other, prioritizing their interests over their duty to the officers. Under Section F of MOU 24, LEPPL directors are subject to the same rules, regulations, and codes of conduct as any other LAPD officer. So why is Craig Lawley still on the job while under investigation for slander? Why is Jamie McBride still active despite a class action lawsuit for labor violations? Being union director shouldn't give them a free pass to violate department codes or engage in corruption. We also call on Chief Choi and Police Commission to investigate the LAPPL and their directors. It's time to restore integrity, accountability, and true representation for LAPPL members. Thank you.
The next speaker, Larry Hanna.
All items, please.
Okay.
Good morning, Larry Hanna, Independent Counsel with the Los Angeles Police Protective League. When action is taken, it sends a message. When inaction occurs, it also sends a message. It's been over a week since the fraud alleged has been made against Commander Lillian Carranza, who is alleged to have created a league member profile when she was not a league member. The profile includes all of her identifying information. Carranza and Deputy Chief Mark Reyna posed as lieutenants and submitted responses to the league's MOU survey in 2023. Carranza tried to access captain assessment survey in 2024, and now we know that in 2016, she took a captain's assessment survey and dishonestly rated herself. Let that sink in. Captain Carranza rated herself. Wow. I have been around a long time and represented officers in many different times and for different things. And they would all be relieved immediately, no questions asked. Immediately. It's been over a week since the lawsuit was filed against defendant Commander Carranza, and the clock started yesterday for Deputy Chief Reyna. It's time to take action. The troops look to you to see that everybody's treated fairly, and that's not happening at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. First off, this is not going to be very nice. Chief Choi, what are you thinking? I've been quite impressed with you and sad to learn that you were on drop. But after what you pulled, I don't think you deserve to retire. You deserve to be fired because you weren't out in the field handling the officer who was doing the traffic stop, not handling the everyday admin duties of the 8,810 officers. Apparently, that's what you expected a lieutenant and a captain to do. The captain who chose to do the officer who chose to do the wrong thing should out at the traffic stop has been arrested and yes, should be terminated, but not the lieutenant or the captain. Apparently you're chicken and you don't have the guts to stand up for your officers. Shame on you. Are you a scaredy cat? You need to fix this mess and get everything situated and in the right line for the lieutenant and the captain right now. Or you should just be fired. Plus, you made Deputy Chief do your nasty detail. That's even worse. Why can't you stand up and show LAPD that you're strong and you stand up for the officers? I'm so mad right now, it has physically made me sick. Shame on you. You need to grow up and put on your big boy pants. I plan to boycott these meetings until you're gone. And right now, I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker, Matthew Garza.
Good morning, all items.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Police Officer Matthew Garza, a director with the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Frustration with our broken disciplinary system has boiled over into every locker room and roll call. Our mayor, city council majority, and Protective League all agree the discipline double standard that protects those in command and targets the rank and file must be rooted out of the LAPD. You would think that swift disciplinary action, based upon the facts contained in our lawsuit, naming defendant Deputy Chief Mark Reyna and Lillian Carranza, would have been taken. Instead, the message being sent to the rank and file by the inaction of the chief and his upper command staff to hold these individuals accountable is deafening, debilitating, and demoralizing to every Los Angeles police officer coming to work, and we ask this police commission to act. Send these two home pending the outcome of a thorough and honest investigation, and then discipline them, just like every other cop in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Andrew Graper.
I will speak to all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry you have to hear from an actual member of the public instead of like a, cop or LAPPL, representative for a second here. The chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the chief takes. Regardless of how long the chief takes to give his report, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. You meet once a week for not even because you skip all meetings all the time for just a couple hours. I think you can take the time to hear from the usually not very long list of people who are trying to speak. Let's see, because it's not long because you hold your meetings at 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday at the police headquarters. And I'm noticing that those first couple rows I can see on cameras are really filled by cops and LAPPL lobbyists. Like, you don't have, like, members of the public aren't even able to come because these meetings are held at ridiculous times of day and there's a lot of people who would like to come and tell you the terrible job that you're doing. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. We have $1,500 for office equipment. It shouldn't be that expensive. We have $1,200 for registration fee for cops to go run somewhere. I don't know. Not sure that's necessary. Oh, here we go. We have $6,200 for an ice maker for the training division. That's a donation given by some kind of organization named after the extremely racist police chief from the 50s. I don't know. That just says a lot about this department. But yeah, I mean, nothing's changed. You all you're continuing his fucking legacy or whatever the heck he did. We have $10,000 for a holiday party for the Topanga division. What do you do on those holiday parties? Because I mean, why should it cost $10,000? We have 1,300 for jumper rentals. We have $2,400 from Rick Caruso. $1,000 from Target for the cadet teenage indoctrination program where cops sexually assault teenage women. And $4,800 for Choi to go to Paris. What about the other officers who are supposedly doing law enforcement activities in France? How much did it cost to send them to Paris?
The next speaker, Chris Worker.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Christian Wecker. I'm a director with the Los Angeles Police Protective League. And I'm here to talk to you about what we believe is disparate treatment of the allegations against Commander Lillian Carranza and now Deputy Chief Mark Reyna. And to that end, I'd like to discuss specifically our management principles, which are the guidelines that our management utilizes to lead our organization. The first management principle talks about reverence for the law. And it says in part that in discharge of our enforcement of criminal statute, the police officer must scrupulously avoid any conduct which would make him a violator of the law. The 20th management principle talks about openness and honesty. It says, above all, the police officer must be consistently open, honest, and trustful in all manners. Prior to being a police commander, excuse me. Prior to being a director, I was a watch commander at 77th Street. And part of my daily duties was to ensure that the Fourth Amendment rights of the arrestees that came in were respected and that probable cause was articulated so that those officers could articulate what they had done. 502 of the Penal Code states that probable cause to arrest exists when anyone who knowingly accesses and without permission alters or otherwise uses any computer system or computer network in order to devise any scheme to defraud or deceive is probable cause to arrest for 502. If any of my officers brought to me the burden of proof of probable cause that has been provided this commission, I would sign that booking approval. So then the question begs, the board, our protective league is simply asking this commission to ensure that equal treatment is provided to everybody who is subject to our disciplinary system. And we ask that you repudiate the morale murdering double standard that dictates that there is one set of rules for the command and a second set of rules for the officers who are in the street running the daily risks. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Hassan Tran.
Can I video first?
Fuck out of my face. See, you got your bullshit fucking pigs coming out.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, hold on to your public comment. Sir, you're disrupting the meeting. You are disrupting the meeting. Cease and desist so this gentleman can make his public comment. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
In my face. You got it in my face. For what? That's what I want to know.
Good morning.
You've been
Lord
provided your
Angeles.
one warning for disrupting the meeting. The next time you will be removed. You are being provided your first warning or you will be removed. Sir, please go ahead.
Good morning, Los Angeles Police Department and everybody. USA controlled by big worldwide corporation, corrupt system.
Sir, I'm sorry, excuse me. You're being removed from the room. Leave the room. Leave the room. You may now leave the room. I'm ordering you to leave the room. I'm ordering you to leave the room. Sergeant at Arms, please remove this gentleman from the room. You're being ordered to leave the room.
Why does my son need an ambulance in this room? That's bullshit. And again, it's all because of your leadership that they're able to act like this, right? All right, so what I want to understand is why your officers keep...
The only thing you need to understand is you've been ordered to leave. Leave the room.
That's what I want to know. That's what I fucking want to know. Why do your officers keep harassing? Answer my question and I'll leave.
No, you're going to leave. How you leave here is up to you. Leave the room. He is leaving the room, or you will also leave the room.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Going after a 2-year-old. That's who threatens you. That's who threatens you. A 2-year-old
The Board of Police Commissioners cannot conduct an orderly meeting because these people who are just creating a disturbance, if it does not stop immediately, I will order the room cleared. If it does not stop immediately, I will order the room cleared. Because the disruptions have not stopped and the board is unable to conduct the orderly meeting, I am ordering the room cleared pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9. We will take a recess until the room is cleared. With 3 Zoom speakers that we will take. Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker.
Okay, up next we have Jim Zurich.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jim Zurich, police officer and a director with the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Yesterday, our union filed an amended lawsuit that added additional allegations of fraud and conspiracy against Commander Lillian Carranza and named Deputy Chief Mark Reyna, the president of the Command Officers Association, as a defendant in the lawsuit for his deceitful actions. You've all been sent a copy of the amended complaint. The question I have for the police commission is this. Do any of you think that a police officer, sergeant, detective, or lieutenant had posed as a commander or deputy chief and fraudulently accessed and corrupted a Command Officer Association survey of its members, that they wouldn't immediately be sent home pending the outcome of a rapid investigation and then brought before a board of rights with a recommendation of termination? I think our members know the answer to that. I think the command officers know the answer to that. And I think, commissioners, you know the answer to that as well. The rank and file members we represent demand an end to the discipline and double standard and accountability now. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, I'd like to also take this gentleman who was denied his public comment period because of this disruption. If we could do that, please. Sir.
I'm sorry?
You have 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Los Angeles Police Department and everybody. USA is controlled by big worldwide corporation, corrupt system. This system is broken. They're doing all kind of dumb and dangerous lie to all American people. They're killing a lot veteran, U.S. military, and all American people, including mental health crisis all over USA. This is seriously crime and criminal to U.S. government. This fight not about me, it's about right and safety to USA and all American people. I will be joined with all police department all around USA fighting to protect U.S. government, more powerful, protect all American people, and we need to stop big worldwide corporation corrupt system must be stopped continuing lie killing dangerous American people. I also have all my information in this phone with Los Angeles Police Department. And can I talk to police chief after this meeting? And another, I want in all mental hospital around USA must be controlled by U.S. government, not by big worldwide corporation. Is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jason.
Sir, your public comment period has concluded. Thank you.
Jonathan Foster, please.
All items.
Oh, 1 moment. We're waiting for the Zoom caller.
Jason.
Roll items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Dear Chief Choi, Police Commissioners, and representatives of the Mayor's Office. Today, the LAPPL stooped to a new low by releasing a flashy, expensive promo video trying to paint Commander Lillian Carranza as some kind of fool for simply logging onto their system and filling out a survey. The video clearly shows her logging in with her actual credentials. No hacking, no deception. How much did that video cost? And more importantly, why are they doing this? Let's not beat around the bush. They're doing this because Commander Carranza had the courage to go after their president, Craig Lally. This last week, they claimed she hacked into their system, sued her for it, and filed a complaint with Attorney General Rob Bonta claiming that it was a criminal act. Now suddenly, they're admitting she simply logged in with her own credentials. But when they realized that didn't work, they changed the narrative, and this week, Big Crime is rating herself on a survey. What did they expect her to do? Rate herself poorly? That's like expecting Trump to vote for Kamala or Kamala to vote for Trump. This entire narrative the LAPPL is spinning is a giant nothing burger. It's all propaganda designed to distract their own officers and the chief from the real issue, retaliation against Commander Carranza for daring to hold Craig Lally accountable. Taking the survey isn't illegal or criminal. For years, 30,000 people have been receiving these surveys. Is the LAPPL going to sue all of them too because they now realize they need to clean up their database? The fact that the LAPPL is doubling down on this nonsense only proves how scared they are. They're desperate to deflect attention away from Craig Lally's actions and onto a fabricated scandal involving Commander Carranza. But it's not working. Everyone can see through this pathetic attempt to smear a respected officer for simply doing her job and standing up for what's right. The LAPPL's leaders are running scared, and it shows. Instead of fixing their broken systems and addressing the real issues within their ranks, they're wasting time and money on a hit piece against one of their own. Nice try, LAPPL, but we're not buying it. It's time to stop the smear campaign, address the real problems, and focus on what truly matters. Restoring integrity and trust within the LAPPL and the LAPD. Thank you very much.
Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. There was a donation coming from Caruso. No rich commissioner should be able to donate for 10 years. That should be put in place. I still think it's a 98% excellent service that the LAPD does. It's 2% that's gross. It's 98% excellent service. It did get the killers of Johnny Wagner. Again, my name is Jonathan Douglas Foster. I'm the strongest, smartest, most powerful man on earth. So I've got some things to say. It's the new Zoot Suit riot. Did you see what happened in the intersection? And then I heard that the Johnny Wagner are two 18-year-olds. Is that Latino racism? And the Jamil Shaw Jr., he was shot by Jose Espinoza, Latino racist. The kids on the bikes, they beat a man. He has no money, and he's not on drugs, right? He was trying to do better. He's not black or white, he's Asian. He was beat up by a bunch of Latino racists. Anybody know Tony Villar's gang nickname? Racist. They had a street takeover. They were busting out the LAPD cop cars, the back window. It's the same thing as DACA. You get what you deserve. Also, the gang enhancements didn't go to the killers of Johnny Wagner, and Gascon is a racist. There were 3 blacks on a vacation from South Carolina. Their rental car was towed for a front license plate was missing, which is not their responsibility. And it was 3 Latinos. I thought that's what I saw, racist. And then the guy who punched the black dude in the jaw, racist, Latino. There was a black lady being dragged off a platform, train platform, being thrown into the street. Did you see that? By a Latino, black female being racist by a Latino racist. You got Gil Cedillo, Kevin Leone, and Martinez talking about the monkey. Nobody said anything. It's a bunch of Latino racists. We're still fighting the Mexican-American War. George Floyd Valentine, I wonder, we don't know, was it a Latino racist that wrote the 18,000. If you're in New York or Chicago, though, illegal aliens are getting $18,000 a month, and that's more than an LAPD officer gets. It's a bunch of Latino racists. The military is suiciding itself and dying without better benefits. It's going to Latinos, people from wherever, or China, or Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Japan, Pakistan, you name it, even England. We had to round up all the illegal aliens from England and send them back to England. So this is a problem. And it came in on DACA, and you people are sick for it. Really
Thank you.
sick.
We have no other speakers in the public.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, consent agenda items. We have items A through H. I'd like to pull A. Vice President Shields, are there any items you'd like to pull? No? Okay. Commissioner Kalanche, are there any items you'd like to pull A through H? Okay. And Commissioner Garcia?
No, thank you.
So what I'd like to do is go ahead then and vote on items B through H, that we adopt the recommendation for board action. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item A is the department's report on donation for $1,553.89 for Mid-Valley. And the only question I have, it seemed in the report that we got, is Chris Zine here? Is Captain Zine here?
Yes, he's on via Zoom.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Hello, Mr. President.
Thank you, Captain. The only question I have is, it says in the request, workstation equipment, and my only questions are, what is being defined as workstation equipment, and who is going to be using this?
Yes, sir. Good morning. So the workstations are going to be the stand-up work desks. This will allow our watch commanders and detectives that are at the seats generally for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day to be able to stand up and continue their work throughout the day. So the request was for 5 stand-up adjustable workstations for dual monitors and 3 workstations for single monitors.
Okay, thank you. Easy enough. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
With that, I would like to, unless there are any other questions or comments, I'd like to move that we adopt the recommendation for board action for item 3A. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 4, regular agenda items. We have a department's verbal presentation relative to an update on the crime statistics reporting, and I believe we have Manager Monique Turner and Jessica Statland. Good morning, and I'll just allow you all to introduce yourselves when you're seated. Thank you. Chief, the floor is yours.
Morning, sir. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, board. I'm Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton. I'm the commanding officer of Detective Bureau, and our CompStat people are here to provide a verbal presentation and update regarding our crime statistics. So without further delay, I'm going to hand it off to Captain O'Connor.
Good morning, Mr. President, Commission. We're here today to present some information on our status of our crime data management, our publication. I'll now pass to Christopher Chase.
Good morning, Lieutenant Chase. I'm the Assistant Commanding Officer of CompStat Division.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Statland. I'm a Senior Crime Intelligence Analyst assigned to CompStat Division. The last time Information Technology Bureau and CompStat Division presented before the Board of Police Commissioners, the department was about to begin the phased rollout of the Motorola Premier One records management system and the transition to the National Incident-Based Reporting System Standard, or NIBRS, from the Summary Reporting System Standard, or SRS. Up until March 2024, the department had reported crime based on the FBI's summary reporting system standard. This method adhered to the hierarchy rule, which means that only the most serious offense per victim is counted in both single and multiple offense incidents. The National Incident-Based Reporting System Standard reports data based on the count of each type of offense, regardless of the number of victims or offenses attributed to each victim. Although all geographic bureaus have transitioned to the new Records Management System, or RMS, in May of 2024, there are still limitations within the RMS. Therefore, certain crimes, particularly motor vehicle theft, and those reported online continue to be reported under the summary reporting system standard. This has caused our crime statistics to be combined, both SRS and NIBRS currently. Since the transition, the Department, Information Technology Bureau, Motorola, and CompStat Division have been working daily to develop a means for reporting crime and delivering measures of effectiveness to the Chief of Police, the Board of Police Commissioners, and the community. The phased rollout of RMS and the shift in reporting standards meant that the process for reporting crime statistics also had to change. The initial phase of reporting was victim-based and provided a year-to-date comparison for historical context. This means that we were counting the number of victims and attributing them to the first crime offense within the case report. A case report can have up to 10 offenses. This was the only way to initially get data from the new records management system in a fashion that would allow us to compare it to past year's data. Phase 2 is our current phase. Starting next week, we will begin counting each offense in an incident regardless of the victim count. Next slide. Thank you. This has allowed us to produce statistical profiles. These profiles are what we have now and continue to be a work in progress. We will add additional statistics, such as arrest statistics, as more data becomes available. These profiles compare 4-week periods, as well as provide a total for year-to-date for 2024, which is combined SRS and NIBRS. We also provide year-to-date totals for 2023 and 2022. While we are unable to compare year-to-date totals due to the different reporting standards, we do compare the 4-week periods, which allows for timely analysis of trends. Starting next week, CompStat Division will begin providing the Chief of Police with analysis and comparisons for the 4-week periods, as well as the year-to-date totals. Additionally, these profiles will begin to be posted on lapdonline.org for the public to view.
Phase 3 is a future phase that mirrors how the California Department of Justice and the FBI are reporting NIBRS data. During the next phase, we are aiming to report the count of each victim of a person crime and count the offense for each property crime documented in the records management system. We're hoping to be able to report this matter in 2025. The department continues to be committed to accurate and timely analysis. With that said, CompStat Division, in conjunction with Information Technology Bureau, worked to create an in-house Power BI application to facilitate similar accounting and tracking of crimes at the divisional level. Using Microsoft Power BI, data from the Records Management System and the Consolidated Crime Analysis Database, or CCAD, were merged to show which offenses occurred day to day. The system is internal and designed to bridge the gap between reporting in CCAD and RMS. And we've prepared a little demonstration to illustrate how the tool will be used.
this time, we are happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for the report, and thank you for the very informative video. It's an outstanding way to capture data now and do some analysis, and probably will help with resource deployments and things like that. I have two questions. About 2 years ago, there were some challenges with regards to hate crime reconciliation between what we were capturing and what would be forwarded on to the FBI and DOJ. Has that been reconciled with this new system, or was that still a deal where we may have a certain number that they don't receive, or vice versa?
So the this particular process has not reconciled that specific issue, but as we build forward, looking at both hate crimes and hate incidents, we're gonna look at how we can basically consolidate that information into kind of a one-stop shop for hate crimes and incidents, making sure that we're bringing in the information for hate incidents from our CORS system, the Community Online Reporting System, which was initiated last year. And so we'll make sure that all that is kind of warehoused and documented in one place. So that'll be a one-stop shop for immediate access to hate crime and hate incident information.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have is regarding unhoused individuals, either as victims, witnesses, or suspects. Are we capturing that information? I would assume that's going to be very useful going forward as we try to deploy resources to address and respond to those kinds of concerns.
I'll have Senior Crime Intelligence Analyst Statlin answer that one, sir.
Yes, the RMS system does capture whether an individual is a homeless victim or a homeless suspect, as well as if the incident itself is homeless related. So we do have the ability currently to determine all of our homeless related crimes, and we are working on means with Motorola to specifically create reports that indicate the number and the percentage of crimes where the suspect is homeless or the victim is homeless.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to get in the weeds, but I have to. So we're increasingly running into unhoused individuals in the field that have either California ID or California driver's license with an address. Are they still deemed to be unhoused with an address? Or are we looking at them in the field determining by those conditions that they are in fact unhoused regardless of what's on their ID?
I'll address that.
Let me answer that. I'll answer that. So the officers in the field are putting on their reports if they're unhoused after talking to the individual that they're detaining or speaking with. Whether they have an ID is irrelevant. If the person says, "I live on the streets," they're going to be categorized as homeless.
Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to know. Appreciate it. Vice President Shields.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the demonstration. My first question is, who selected the dramatic music for the demonstration? But I do think it was very helpful just to see how it was, how very user-friendly it is. So hopefully it will be something that really can, one of the last slides mentioned, reducing the administrative redundancies. And CompStat's very important, but we don't want many people off the street just preparing for CompStat for every session. So the more we really can leverage technology to help simplify that, the better. And so really kudos to you for developing this system to help. I know it was a massive undertaking. One question I have just about how crime is reported just generally, there could be one victim of a robbery, but there could be many perpetrators, right? So being robbed by one person's one thing. If there's like a mob coming after you or your store, you're still the one victim. How does the crime statistics account for the number of perpetrators that increases the feeling of not being safe? Or does it?
Hey, good morning, ma'am. So the number of suspects typically is something we capture in the investigation. It doesn't specifically change the statistical outlook of that incident. It's still a robbery. Multiple crimes they may have multiple suspects, multiple victims. It's categorized the same way. We look at offenses. So an offense, a single incident of robbery may have multiple victims, if that helps. But it's not specifically something captured statistically. It'd be something more relevant for the investigation.
And that's the same, I guess, and I understand the need to collect statistics based on, what FBI is requiring so that it keeps it very even. But it kind of surprises me, especially in light of all of these like smash and grab robberies and things like that. And like you could be a rape victim by one person, and then if there's a gang rape, right? Like it changes the dynamic of the offense itself by the number of perpetrators. And so, is there any other mechanism that we're using, not just for purposes of solving the crime and investigating the crime, but really understanding whether there are more significant trends and why there may be an increase in criminality based on the number of perpetrators?
Correct. They may have a little bit more on that, ma'am, but just
So
as far as the specific crime, for example, categorizing something as a robbery, but as far as the characteristics of a crime or the deeper subsets of statistics, like the number of suspects, that is something we could capture, search, and use in our analytical process. So it's not something that's just it's there. It doesn't change the fact that there's a single robbery, but it would change the components of that robbery. And I believe
We also,
Good morning, I'm Information Systems Manager for Application Development and Support Division. So just to answer the question, we do have the data, and so we can produce reports in that manner to identify if there are multiple suspects. The data is there. For the purposes of this presentation, we're focusing on incident-based reporting.
and a lot of it comes down to the analysis. Within Motorola, we are working on creating a crime analysis module. And we have hundreds of codes, which are called MO codes, which are the different characteristics of a crime. So we do have codes that indicate if a business was overtaken by suspects, if it was for example, flash rob or a flash mob situation. So those codes can be added to the MO code section, which will allow the analysts at each geographic area, as well as CompStat and the various bureaus, to do a comprehensive query of the RMS system to determine which crimes fit that MO. We also provide every week to the chief the number of victims associated to a crime, as well as the number of suspects associated to the crime. So while the data is available, and that is the first step, it comes down to the analysis. And we do pride ourselves in providing a very comprehensive analysis and ensuring that we have a process in place to be able to retrieve that and put together a good product that can be used by investigators.
Excellent. I think that if there are ways to really capture the MO and be able to like do the geofence and find, how many had this type of similar thing, that can really help speed up the investigative process. So thank you for that, and thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you. Vice President Shields, Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. A couple of follow-up questions. So NIBRS is the DOJ system that we have to report to, right? And our new RMS system is supposed to eventually track into how the NIBRS data is collected, just, right? Am I correct?
it's collected in that fashion now, ma'am.
Oh, it's collected.
Exactly. We are collecting data and reporting to the DOJ in NIBRS format.
Okay, and I know we rolled out the new reporting system, right? That patrol or station divisions are using. Have there been any hiccups in getting that information? Because I know we're testing it out, so I'm just wondering how that's been going.
Yes, so ITB has been working with Cal DOJ and Motorola with pushing our data on a weekly basis to validate the incident-based reporting data. And we have not found any significant issues whatsoever. We work with them on a weekly basis, and we are on track to get certified so that we can start doing full data collection.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for the report. And I echo anything that helps reduce the lift before a ComStat meeting is definitely an important thing for the department and the folks involved. Question a little bit related to the number of suspects, but in the presentation, it was mentioned that we would be able to capture arrests. Can you expand a little bit on how that is and where that would be sort of in the reports?
So currently, arrest reports are still going into the Consolidated Crime Analysis Database with CCAD. And slated for later in September, we are going to be rolling out the booking module of Premier One RMS. So we are currently capturing arrests. Once we transition to the booking module, there will be there'll be a little bit of a learning curve in how we extract the data and then can publish it. So we will have the ability to report arrest statistics. We just don't know what it looks like at this point in order to put it on the public-facing profile. So as we mentioned, the public-facing profile is a work in progress, and we want to make that available to the public as soon as possible instead of waiting for everything to be developed. We are putting it out as it becomes available, and we will add to it when more data sets come online.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, do you have any comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Commissioner. So I just want to make it clear to the commission and to the public what's to come. Part of the reason why I wanted all of you to see this presentation again was there's two things that keep coming to my desk as questions from the public is when is the crime mapping function, public-facing crime mapping, where community members were able to log on to LAPD online and look at crime in their communities. When is that going to be active and updated? And then the second question that keeps coming in is when are we going to see comparative data? Because we're used to seeing year-over-year data. But right now we're dealing with two data sets, the summary data and then the NIBRS data, right? So if you guys can elaborate on that and give us some timelines, it's really the crux of this presentation to address some of the community concerns that I'm getting.
So I think you're referring to the Crime Stoppers external link that's on LAPD online. And so that is managed by an external partner of us where we were pushing our data to that company so that they can post it. With the implementation of RMS, our focus was making sure that we can report internally to you, sir, and to ComStat to make sure that they have the relevant data for reporting. The dust is now settling, and we're at a point where now we can start engaging with our partners where we normally share data with to start sending the new updated data. So that is on our path. We've satisfied ComStat with their data, and now we'll start working with our external partners and pushing out that data. And then the third iteration is anything other outwardly facing data portals that we have.
Okay, can you tell me roughly when community members can start seeing the mapping?
I can probably give you, I would have to come back and report on that. The number one concentration has been internal and ComStat. I'll have to come back to give you a more concrete plan at a further date.
Can you? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be?
Yes, absolutely. I have full confidence. I can say by the end of the year. Yes.
Okay.
To answer the second part of your question, Chief, of when we can see year-to-date or year-over-year comparative data, it will probably be June of 2025, so that we have a full year under our belts of NIBRS data, and then we can compare it to the same data set. What we want to avoid is comparing apples to oranges. We would like to compare apples to apples.
So what are we going to be publishing forward-facing?
We will be comparing 4-week to 4-week periods. We have been have had all geographic bureaus on RMS since May 14th. So we will be able to give 4-week compared to 4 weeks with a percent change. And that is apples to apples. And then we will be providing year-to-date totals, not a comparison. We want to provide the totals so that we have an idea and the community has an idea of the amount of crime that they have had in their communities for the year. But we do caution to complete a percent change because they are different systems and it's counting crime just differently. And it's not a matter of over reporting crime or under reporting crime. It's a matter of it's a different perspective on crime. And we are going to be in line with the FBI mandate. And ultimately that is the important thing is we're reporting crime accurately to the community and the public.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche?
Quick follow-up. So what is available now? What does the public see when they go on the website?
As of next week, they will have the profile that we brought up for the chief of police. That's the citywide profile. And then there will be a profile for each of the 21 areas and 4 geographic bureaus.
Okay, so it'll be by division.
Yes.
And then in the future, let's say June 2025, would they be able, not just only see like comparative data, but also, and year-to-date and comparative data, but also, could they do like geofences? Like if I just want, in my division, I just want my neighborhood. Would I be able to do that I know we'll do it internally, but would the public be able to do that?
That's where the crime mapping that Ms. Turner was just mentioning, that's where that will be instrumental. And previous to RMS, the community, that's how they were doing their crime lookups, was using the posted profiles in conjunction with the crimemapping.com.
And I just want to add, so there are, on LAPD Online, we have the posted reports that are done by ComStat. There's also a link called from Crime Stoppers where we push our data, and they get a subset of our data. There is also an additional external website, which is the City of Los Angeles Open Data Portal, where we post data on a monthly basis. So to answer your question, Chief, for the Open Data Portal, we have finalized what the fields are going to be, and we are actively working on pushing that portion out. That is done internally, and the expectation for the Open Data Portal should be by the end of September. Going back to Crime Stoppers, I'm working with, that's an external agency, and we have to work in conjunction on providing the fields and seeing how they will ingest the data to put it into their new mapping. So there are 2 different data components.
Thank you for that clarification.
So thank you. Chief, I'm not a marketing expert, but it sounds like we're going to need a very comprehensive communication strategy to share this availability to the public in a way that they understand which site, which link, how to get it, what it offers, when this finally is ready to go.
And this is the first step in that, sir.
Okay, thank you. And with all due respect and echoing Vice President Shields' comments, whatever you put out there, make sure the video is there as well. Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
I just
Yes,
want to
ma'am, go
add
ahead.
one thing, just going back to your question about the presentation. So currently, that is the the internal-facing dashboard. The ultimate plan is to provide a similar dashboard for the public, very similar to our Racial Identity Profiling Act, where we had an internal dashboard and then we have an external one. That will be the long-term goal. We'll be able to have that. So citizens can go to the Open Data Portal, download raw data. If they wanted to see something more consolidated, they'll be able to use a very similar dashboard.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll now move on to agenda item 4B, Inspector General's report relative to the review of the department's U and T non-immigrant status visa program. Is Florence going to do? Okay. Good morning. Okay. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Good morning, President Southers, Vice President Shields, hot mic. Commissioners, Chief Choi, Acting Executive Director Ferber, Acting Inspector General Yu, City Attorney De La Guerra, Ms. Silva. Before you this morning is the OIG's review of the department's U and T non-immigrant status visa program. I'll talk briefly about what those are in just a second, but I want to get my thank yous out of the way. With me today is Police Special Investigator Manny Lopez. Not with me here today are two other team members who significantly contributed to this report. It's Police Performance Auditor 4, John Gross-Didier, and Police Special Investigator Don McMullen. We also have representatives of the department here with us. If you wanted to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. Detective Marisa Naga, I'm our U Visa Coordinator.
And so in addition to thanking my team for the report, also wanted to thank Chief Choi, Chief Hamilton, Commander Mastic, and Detective Sadnaga for their cooperation and support. They were excellent in providing us access to the database, answering all of our questions. And then we also, as we noted in our report, provided them with a draft version of this report that they reviewed and provided us important feedback on. So I wanted to thank them for their cooperation as well. So by way of background, in July 2023, the OIG initiated a brief and limited scope review of the department's U and T non-immigrant status visa program, commonly referred to as U visa and T visas. The United States Congress in October of 2000 passed legislation that established temporary visa status for immigrant victims of severe crime. The T non-immigrant status visa, or the T visa, provides immigration protection to victims of severe human trafficking. And the U non-immigrant status visa, or the U visa, provides immigration benefit for victims of a specific set of crimes, typically violent crimes. The U visa, temporary immigration status, lasts up to 4 years, and Congress issues up to 10,000 of these U visas every year. The federal government's U&T visa program is run out of the Department of Homeland Security, United States Citizen and Immigration Services, USCIS. Now, it's important to note, requests that come into the LAPD are not the applications for the visa themselves, but in the case of the T visa, it's an endorsement certifying that the nature of the crime or the victimization meets the federal government's criteria. And similarly for the U visa, it's certifying that the type of crime, the location of the crime, meet the established criteria of the program. And then the victim would then include that along with their full application to the federal government. So the request of the department is just one step in a much longer process. So the IG's office looked at a period of 3 years from October 3rd, 2020 to October 3rd, 2023. In that time period, the department processed a total of 5,770 U visa certification requests and no T visa requests. Now, we have talked with experts, we talked with the department, we've looked at some of the federal government information available online, and we understand that a number of reasons why the number of T visa certification requests might be low include that the federal government does not issue as many T visas. The processing time is much lengthier. The nature of human trafficking, traffickers will exert extreme control over the victims, and so they may fear for their own safety and lives, and so may not want to come forward and cooperate with law enforcement, or that the LAPD works with other federal agencies on human trafficking task forces, and so some of the victims of human trafficking may just go directly to those federal agencies for that certification. Obviously, we don't know why there were none, but generally those are some of the major reasons why, or that are cited, why the number of T visa certification requests is often much lower than the number of U visa requests. As a part of the OIG's methodology, we looked at a sample of the U visa certification requests that were approved. We looked at a sample of those requests that were denied. And then whether it's a T visa or a U visa, if your request for certification or endorsement are denied, victims have the opportunity to appeal the denial. And so we looked at a sample of U visa certification requests that were denied. We also spoke with key department personnel and other city personnel who work with immigrant communities. As we thought it was important to get their perspective on whether and how the U visa program is working for the people that are impacted by the program. We got some really important insights from their participation, and though we won't name them, we just want to thank them for their support of this project. Out of the 5,770 U visa certification requests that were processed, a total of 4,680, or 81%, were certified, while 1,090, or 19%, were denied. From the population of those requests that were certified, the OIG selected a random sample of 50 to review, and I'll go into my findings in just a minute. Out of the requests that were denied, the OIG selected a random sample of 161. We think it's important to note that the sample was higher for those that were denied because we believe that the risk for an incorrect decision was higher with the denials, and so we increased our sample size as a result. And then we looked at a sample of 20 denials. What we found out of the certification requests that were approved, for all 50 of those, we found that the certification requests were reviewed. There was evidence on file to support the approval, and that the documentation was included in accordance with all federal, state, and department requirements. Of the 161 certification requests that had been denied, we found that for 149 of them, or 93%, the evidence on file supported that the requests were properly denied in accordance with federal, state, and department requirements. For 12 of those, or 7% of the sample, we didn't have any evidence or reason to support that, and so we could not make a determination. And we found for the 20 denials, 18 of the original denials were upheld, meaning that the request was denied, and 2 of them were upheld, and we found that the evidence supported both of those conclusions. The 18 that were, the denial was upheld, and 2 where it was reversed. In terms of the timeliness of each of these processes, it's included in both the federal requirements and in state law that these requests for certification and endorsement must be completed in a certain time period. And we found the vast majority of the U visa certification requests were processed in a timely manner. There was an average of within 4.3 days, which is well within all requirements. With respect, we also looked at internal training. The department has U visa coordinators in all of the geographic divisions and several specialized divisions, and they actually have secondary U visa coordinators identified as well, in addition to the department-wide U visa coordinator, Detective Sadnaga, who wears many hats. And we found that there was really a scarcity of training that we could find that was offered to the department's U visa coordinators. We know that there is a special order that outlines the process, and that there was a somewhat dated training bulletin. And so when I get to my recommendations, that was one of the things that we recommended, was to update or provide some of the training. We also looked at any complaints or lawsuits related to the UNT visa program that might have been filed during our sample time period from October of 2020 to October of 2023. We found no lawsuits associated with the UNT visa program, and we found 1 complaint, and that complaint was closed as insufficient evidence to adjudicate. We explained why in the report, and the OIG believes that that was an appropriate determination for the department to make based on the evidence. And we also found that the department posts a lot of information on its website, including what the immigration program is, how to access it, how it works, how it fits in with the federal requirements. And so we found that to be a positive, and the department should be commended for making all that information available. And so finally, based on our review, we have 3 recommendations. First, develop and distribute a UT visa training bulletin that includes a comprehensive overview of the program, procedures for assisting applicants, and a list of available resources and contacts for further guidance. Second, conduct a thorough assessment of the training currently provided to Division U visa coordinators, including both primary and secondary coordinators. Document the findings and evaluate the necessity for additional periodic training, specifying the frequency and content required for ongoing development. And third, require each police station lobby, as well as other applicable locations accessible to the public, to have brochures or flyers in multiple languages detailing the steps and requirements for UT visa certification or endorsement requests. And that's just, even though the information is available online, we thought it made sense Not everyone can access the internet, so we thought that it would be helpful to have it in publicly accessible locations across the department and across the city. And then in accordance with Mayoral Executive Directive number 32 from 2021, ensure that the appropriate languages are included for these brochures. And as I mentioned, we provided the department with an advanced draft of this report. They reviewed it. We included their response in our report in the appendices, as well as the relevant special order, and prepared to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from our commissioners? Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for the report. It's really interesting and informative. I have some concerns about the T visas and how that we don't have any requests. So I'm wondering, and reasonable explanation as to why why we don't have these requests. So I'm wondering if we're working with partners, because we've had multiple amazing presentations about the partnerships that LAPD has with organizations that are anti-human trafficking, and we have incredible, partnerships and relationships. So I'm wondering if we could get some insight from them in the future to see if these requests are actually happening, and track where these are going, just for our own information, because it is concerning that we have a huge issue here in LA with human trafficking, yet there's no T visa requests. So, yeah.
So, ma'am, I can address that. One of the issues when we talk about the human trafficking concept as a whole, in regards to specifically the T visa, we find it would be more applicable to a labor violation in terms of the human trafficking, not necessarily what we more commonly see as sex trafficking. So in terms of the individual involved in a human trafficking situation involving labor, for instance, some kind of indentured servitude or something like that, quite typically, those investigations may be first seen, or may become first alerted to it on the LAPD, but typically that would go over to the Department of Homeland Security. So HSI investigations would adopt that investigation federally, and then they would pick up that course of action on a T visa. So basically, they would adopt both the investigation, and they would follow that process all the way through, and they would basically steward that investigation and prosecution, if it should come to a prosecution, through the U.S. Attorney's Office. So it kind of gets taken out of our hands at some point early in the investigation and gets adopted by a federal agency, typically, for that side. For the when we become involved in a sex trafficking investigation, we will quite often kind of do something similar. We'll work hand in hand with our federal partners, and then we will typically assist them on the investigative side, and they will handle the administrative side on the DHS, HSI investigation side.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Shields.
Yeah, I think I had a little bit of a related question as to, it looks like we're processing a significant number of U visas, and just wondering how, are we working very closely with the detectives and others in the department who might not be a coordinator, but they're the ones that are likely to see the victims in the first instance before they ever refer them to you or anything. So what type of training or education is given to patrol officers, detectives, others, just so that they understand that this is an opportunity?
So we briefly discuss it in our various courses, but also just having our coordinators at each of the geographic areas helps, because they discuss it and, most importantly, talk to the front desk officers, because that's where we get a lot of requests coming in, just making sure information is there. Another why having information out in the lobbies, I think, would be very useful. But and then I know a lot of our areas are starting to do more outreach and education, not only amongst personnel in the departments, but also at community events, which is increasing the number of applications we're getting. So it's kind of informal education, but we're trying to get that information out there both internally and publicly.
Great, and it looks like you agree with the recommendation about like having brochures or flyers, both that can be put in the front lobbies and then taken to community events and potentially provide to all of our partner community organizations so that they have them at their hand. So I think that's a very great recommendation. Is there specific training that you would like to see all primary and secondary coordinators have more regularly so that I understand there's, the special order number 12 that came out, but is there additional training that you think would be helpful or even like checklists or something that would be helpful for you?
I've actually developed an internal, like a department guideline that I give to each of the new coordinators, and we have annual meetings. Oftentimes the U-Visa coordinators stay the same at the areas because while it could be start out as our major assault crime coordinator because they develop the expertise in the area, even if they get moved to a new table, they keep the title. So that's been really nice that we have that ongoing person at the area. So besides the annual meetings, and if a new person does come in or they have a backup, the coordinator at the area will do a training for that person. I'm also available. I've done, I think in the last 2 months, like 4 one-on-one trainings with people going over. It's not too difficult. And with both the special order and the guidelines, guidebook I have for them, it's not too hard now. Doing the database is another struggle, but I'll sit down and walk them through that. But
Can I make a recommendation that you do a video so that you don't have to meet with everyone and then also be available for questions? But that might be a way to capture your institutional knowledge and pass it on for every new coordinator in addition to being available for them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, with dramatic music, that's right. Thank you for the report. Questions. So when folks are wanting to apply, do they usually start with USCIS and then get rerouted to the department, or do they start with the department and then move through the process?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I was talking about the T visa application. The U visa application process is different. That is one where we take in, we do the intake and we take that information, and it's generally initiated by a divisional detective or a specialized unit detective. We will generally take that information mostly from victims, occasionally from witnesses, and then we will process that information through the process as it was described here. The difference being on the T visa side, usually there is a type of investigation. It's of a type of investigation where there's lengthy processes ahead of any action by the department. So for instance, let's say a tip came in that there was human trafficking going on at 100 Main Street. There would typically be an investigation before any department action is taking place. So it would be undercover. We would look at the possible people involved. So that front end part is not going to cause the initiation of a T visa application. Once we take action and we identify activity that is of a criminal nature, typically that information is going to go over to the federal side, and that would trigger USCIS and DHS involvement, most typically Homeland Security investigations. So that would transition over to them, and that's where the T visa application would come in when an investigation is conducted, a victim is identified, suspects are identified, or an organization or network typically, and then that person identifies that a crime has occurred, so it meets that two-pronged test, a crime has occurred, and they're a victim or a witness, and they're requesting that protection under a T visa request.
Thank you. Of the denials, I think there was 2 that were ultimately changed. What is the process for reviewing or ensuring that those denials are the right decision?
We've actually changed the appeal process. So prior to the special order coming out in 2022, it was, if someone was denied their U visa certification request, they could then appeal at the geographic area where the denial was received. In 2022, we decided because we get a relatively few number of appeals, and it should be universal, more universal, that at Detective Bureau, the U visa coordinator, so myself and now two partners, we review all appeals. So that's the new process. So anyone wanting to deny it, whether it's the applicant themselves or their attorney, they now send that request via mail or email to Detective Bureau, and we'll review that. We review the initial denial to see why it was denied, and if it does need to get appealed and certified, we'll do that. If the denial was accurate, we'll write another letter explaining why that was denied.
All right, thank you. And then just to echo the recommendations, definitely the video I think is a good idea to get folks trained, and sort of introduce it if you aren't already doing it at like the USCIS, whether it's their monthly or quarterly service provider meetings, where they host immigration service providers, and then also just other coalitions and collaboratives throughout the city to make sure folks understand that this process exists and how they can support the communities that they represent.
So I did want to point out also, just like we had the Truth Series throughout the city, we've had Days of Dialogue, we've had other community meetings, we've had some of our employees in various configurations do community presentations. Generally, over the years, the U visa presentation has been a part of those presentations as well, where we'll actually bring in our detective table coordinator for our major assault crimes, which handles domestic violence, which is the most common application. We'll have them come in and talk about the availability, what the process looks like, and we typically would do that in both English and Spanish, depending on where we're doing the presentation. We would love to obviously have those other languages available, and we make sure that the community understands that not only do we provide it as a resource, but we encourage people to take advantage of the process because that enhances our investigations as well.
And I'll just add quickly, also, one of the largest networks, the Los Angeles Violence Against Women's Act network of legal service providers. I am in regular contact with them, and they host an annual roundtable for all law enforcement agencies that certify U visas. So we meet every November and make sure to give out current, like what's happening, or do we have new contacts, any changes in our policies. So we make sure to stay in contact with them.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the comprehensive report and your incredible attention to detail. This is a very important matter, and I'm glad to hear that you're meeting annually with colleagues to share information and perhaps some best practices. So with that, I would move that we approve the Inspector General's report. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, great report, thank you.
We'll move on to regular agenda item C, which is the department's report relative to small unmanned aerial systems, the annual report, and we have Commander Paulson. Morning, Commander.
Good morning, sir. All right, good morning, Mr. President and Commissioners. The department has completed its most recent annual report of our use of the Small Unmanned Aerial Systems, or SUAS. Department policy currently restricts the use of SUAS technology to 3 commands: Metropolitan Division for use by Special Weapons and Tactics, or SWAT; Emergency Services Division for use by our Hazardous Devices and Materials sections, or Bomb Squad and Hazmat; and the Multidisciplinary Collision Investigation Team, or MSIT, within Traffic Group. This evaluation period encompasses fiscal year 2023 and 2024, during which there were a total of 26 SUAS requests for deployment. Of those, 19 resulted in actual deployments, and 7 were actually resolved prior to the flight by the SUAS platforms. The majority of requests were submitted in the course of SWAT operations, with 19 being for armed barricaded suspects and 2 for high-risk search warrants. 4 were approved MSIT deployments related to critical traffic investigations. In addition, there was 1 policy deviation which was approved actually by the Board of Police Commissioners in response to the concerns surrounding the Ocean View Plaza towers. Ultimately, no SUAS deployment occurred as a result of that approval. The SUAS requests were made for incidents throughout the city. For SWAT, that included 6 each in Operations South Bureau and Operations Valley Bureau, 5 in Operations West Bureau, and 4 in Operations Central Bureau. MSIT deployments occurred 1 each in South Bureau and Valley Bureau, and 2 in Central Bureau. With the one exception, all approved deployments met the criteria established by policy. All were appropriately reviewed and approved by either Deputy Chief David Kowalski, the Commanding Officer of Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau, or myself as the Assistant Commanding Officer of the Bureau, in concurrence with the on-scene incident commander. In all deployments, the appropriate timely notifications were made to the Executive Director of the Police Commission, or in their absence, the President of the Police Commission. In addition, the appropriate documentation was completed and submitted within the required timeframe. Each individual deployment was reviewed to ensure Fourth Amendment restrictions were adhered to and privacy concerns were appropriately considered. In addition, all flights, including training flights, were in compliance with FAA regulations, and all data collected for each deployment has been retained and stored in compliance with department policies. The availability of the SUAS technology continues to be a vital tool for use by SWAT and our bomb squad and hazardous materials personnel during critical incidents, providing for greater officer safety, a safe alternative to potentially violent confrontations, and providing greater opportunity for de-escalation. In addition, it has proven to be a useful tool for MSIT in their investigation of serious traffic collisions and those involving increased liability to the city. I'm available for any questions you might have regarding this report, and I have with me today Commander Craig Valenzuela in case you have any questions specific to traffic groups deployment for the MSIT team.
Thank you, Commander. I just want to start by saying that I'm very impressed with the fact that each year you come and respond to the 7 questions that we want answers to. And what's incredibly impressive also is anytime you've got deployment, it's down to the 100th of a second with regards to how that tool is being used. So we really appreciate your attention to detail. I have no questions or comments. I'm going to defer to Vice President Shields.
Thank you. And thank you for the report. It was particularly interesting to see kind of the man-hours saved for the MSIT investigations and how that technology was able to just kind of expedite a lot of otherwise significant manpower that would have taken to recreate those areas. So I think that was very interesting. With regards to the 7 call-outs that were where there was non-deployment, do you have any additional kind of information? Was that the situation resolved very quickly thereafter, or was there a delay in terms of the ability to actually get out there?
No, in most cases, there comes a consensus where an incident commander approves the deployment of the SWAT, of the SUAS, and then the on-scene command staff officer, which is either one of the captains of Metro, myself, or Deputy Chief Kowalski, depending on which one of us is on call, will either concur with that, or in the case where the captains are present, phone calls need to be made for approval as the policy currently requires. There are instances, such as in these 7 instances in this report, where in that intervening period, there are continuous crisis negotiation efforts being made, contacts attempting to be made and continuing with the suspect. That will continue throughout any encounter. And in those specific 7 instances, it turned out that prior to that approval and the actual physical deployment and lifting off of that platform, the SUAS, that we ultimately brought the incident to a conclusion with the surrender of the suspect.
And in the kind of one of the last questions about kind of evaluating its effectiveness and looking at potential expansions for the department, and is the department looking, maybe this is a question for Chief Choi, but is the department looking at expanding it beyond the 3 commands or for additional purposes to the extent that you have that, and when can we kind of expect more thinking and proposals in that vein? And also, it's a very compound question. Also, have you been monitoring what other agencies nearby are also doing to get ideas as to how to expand this thoughtfully?
Yes, ma'am. And this compound question, correct. There are actually, there's two avenues, if you will, regarding this. And this is specifically those functions similar to the way we are using it in support of special operations, specific crises, that sort of thing. Perhaps monitoring crowds at significant events or potential events that have a counterterrorism or a concern in that regards. That specific policy, we are actually looking at expanding. We have written a proposal. It is currently going through the appropriate review process in the various commands within our department. And that would be for a use very similar to what you have here, just expanding it to other commands, following, after they have put the appropriate cadre together that has gone through the appropriate certifications and training and are aware of the necessary adherence to our policies. The other side of that I think you're alluding to is the various uses by these platforms, by other agencies, as a first responder, and what is called the DRF program, or the Drone as a First Responder, or DFR program, Drone as a First Responder. That currently the department has approved a working group, and they will be exploring that feasibility.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for this information. My question is more around question 6 about the cost savings. And I know it's difficult to measure the actual savings, but I'm wondering if we could figure out how to better tell the story or track how this is leading to faster resolution, which you do mention, that is saving us, deploying officers, and associate some sort of cost and cost savings. Because I think to tell the story as we think about the future expansion or future use, critical use of this technology, I think a lot of the time having an actual amount that we're saving is critical. So if we could figure out how to do this, I even turned to Commissioner Southers, because I know that like an economics department could figure out how to come up with some sort of cost model, right? So yeah, I'm just trying to, if we could think about how to do that, I think it would help make a case for us to have access to more technology in the future.
I think in those instances, like in this cycle, there were several deployments for search warrant service. And, those are deployed generally to review approaches, for safe approaches, that sort of thing, on exterior of target locations, which would otherwise be done perhaps by an airship deployment. And I think a reasonable calculation might be able to be made in regards to the cost of flying an airship for that purpose. For the majority of our uses, specifically speaking to the SWAT team, that would be more difficult. We could certainly extrapolate that if this scenario continued for an hour, the cost of that deployment of that team for that hour at 2:00 in the morning with everyone on overtime, we can certainly extrapolate a cost to that. The complication or difficulty is absent the flight of the SUAS and the intelligence it gives us. Those circumstances and those situations are so fluid and hyperdynamic that we will never really know how long it might have gone absent that SUAS.
If I could just add to that. So the majority of our deployments are obviously with SWAT, and they're for tactical reasons, for officer safety. It's not a cost-saving measure. That's not what it is. Right. Maybe if you look at our MSEC callouts, or using a drone to map out a crime, traffic accident location, and that's quicker than manually measuring everything, that you might be able to see some savings there. But really, this drone gets to places where we don't have to send a person. That may result in a categorical use of force. That's the value in this for specialized operations.
But it
Drone
is a
first
cost
responders.
savings. I mean,
Well,
we're saving life, but we're also saving money.
Not necessarily.
We're not.
I mean, if you call a team out for a barricaded suspect, that team's the team. They're not going away just because we're using the US. It's just another tool for them. So every situation is going to be different, as Commander Paulson alluded to. So putting a cost on that, I think the effort that it would take to measure each incident after the fact is not, the real effort here is it's safer for us to use this tool than to send a person in there. And that's what this value is.
I hear you, but I still think that we should figure out, like, even if it's, this next year anecdotally, we're tracking the benefit of sending a drone versus, a helicopter. I don't know, something. Yeah. That would just be a recommendation.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, so thank you for the report, appreciate it. It's a similar question, asked maybe a little bit different, but would we be able to put together sort of a profile of incidents and the results of those profile of incidents, and then be able to compare them to when there was arrow versus not, and then potentially achieve both? Like, was the value, and then value can be cost, can be life to the officer's life to community, and be able to capture and compare it in that way. I get that may be a little bit difficult because there's a lot of assumptions to be done in that comparison, but if that could be possible, then we can really look at what the value of that could be. Because a lot of times we're looking at incidents and we're sort of looking at it saying, what if we had this technology, what would have been the outcome? And maybe it would have been very different. So if that's possible, that would be great to look at. Thank you.
And I think it would be exceptionally difficult. The SUAS is the most recent, technological advent to add to our repertoire. In the past, and we still do, we use wheeled robotics. As I'm going to address next in the agenda, we now have the quadruped. So to be able to state with any confidence an outcome that might have happened, or to be able to compare, like I say, every circumstance is different. The circumstances that perhaps led the suspect to commit the acts they did are different. The environment is different. Our ability to have access to that suspect's perhaps family to make a recording to appeal to him to surrender might be different or available or not. So there really is I don't see an ability to make an apples to apples or oranges to oranges comparison of this scenario without the SUAS and this scenario with the SUAS, and how they one contributed in a manner that the other didn't. It just would be exceptionally challenging.
I would suggest this. I think there's a technology committee or those committee members can meet with you folks and just kind of brainstorm and see if there's an approach to do this. What I don't want is you guys spinning your wheels and putting a lot of time into this to come up with exactly what we just talked about. So that would be a recommendation.
Thank you again, Commander. Thank you for the report. I've discussed this with the chief. I have a very keen interest in your working group, so if you would let me know when and where you meet, if I'm able to be there, I would like to be there. All eyes are on Los Angeles now with the Olympics being over, and everybody knows that the French deployed incredible SUAS capabilities during that event. That didn't get a lot of airtime, which was good, but I'm sure it was effectively used. So this is going to be very important going forward.
Definitely.
If there are no other questions or comments, I would then go ahead and recommend that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
And if you'll just stay there.
Absolutely.
For the department's report relative to the quadruped unmanned ground vehicle yearly inspection report. And again, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning again. You have before you the first annual inspection report for the quadruped unmanned ground vehicle, or QUGV, for the fiscal year 2023-2024. As was reported in a prior quarterly presentation, this technology was approved for deployment after all formal training was completed in August of 2023. The use of the QUGV remains reserved solely for deployment by Special Weapons and Tactics, or SWAT, personnel in specific high-risk incidents. The department's report includes the details and rationale for each of the deployments which have occurred within the fiscal year, but I'll provide a very brief overview. For the first just over 10 months, the technology has been part of our department's inventory. We have deployed it in the field in 6 instances. This included 1 in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter, 1 in the third quarter, and 2 in the fourth. All of the 6 incidents involved suspects believed to be in possession of firearms. This included 1 suspect involved in an officer-involved shooting, 1 suspect in possession of a handgun on an MTA bus, 2 suspects who committed assaults with firearms on victims and barricaded themselves in a residence, 1 group of armed suspects committing a burglary, and 1 suspect wanted for kidnapping for ransom who fled into a large estate property during the victim's rescue by officers. In 2 incidents, the suspects had fired rounds at or in the presence of victims or fired rounds during negotiations with our SWAT crisis negotiators. In 3 incidents, verified firearms were recovered, and in 2 incidents, the suspect was found to have been in possession of replica firearms. In 3 of the deployments, the incident was ultimately resolved with the surrender of the suspect. In 2 incidents, the suspect successfully evaded capture prior to SWAT's arrival. And in 1 deployment, the suspect was found to have committed suicide while he remained barricaded during the course of crisis negotiations. The deployments occurred in the following geographic areas: Olympic, Newton, Hollywood, Van Nuys, West Valley, and 1 deployment outside the city. That was in support of the kidnap for ransom investigation involving a hostage rescue. All of the QUGV deployments complied with established policy, were appropriately screened and approved, and all post-deployment logs were properly submitted within the required timeframe. We believe the use of this technology continues to meet its intended purpose, which is to better protect our officers in the community and prevent unnecessary confrontation and avoid unnecessary injury to the suspects we are attempting to apprehend. I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have regarding this issue.
Thank you, Commander. So as I found myself, as I was going through your report, highlighting the unique qualities of this asset, and I wound up highlighting more than not. As you probably know, I have a background in working with traditional tracked robotics, and we've come a long way. So a couple of things. First, I want to commend you on the use. I want to ask, as this robotics is deployed, and by the way, we got to do something about this. In an industry where we live by acronyms, we need to come up with something a little bit more creative than what we've got. Maybe a contest with regards to what we're going to call it. But anyway, as you are deploying this asset, are we videoing the asset being used? In other words, could we make a video of what it's doing other than what it sees? Can we see it?
Up to a certain extent.
Right.
Obviously, upon that platform entering, the threatening environment, which is usually the confines of a house or something similar, that would be limited. But up to that point, the teams, the members of the SWAT team have body-worn video that are running, to include the operator, the perimeter officers. So anybody in a vantage point to be watching the approach of the QUGV would certainly have that on, again, if it was a vantage point that was appropriate and conducive to that.
Okay. And I say this as a compliment because I'm sure Commissioner Shields remembers, as I do, as we were going through confirmation. This was a specific question we were challenged with, but didn't have these kinds of incidents behind us to say how effective it could be used. So with that, I think that this is certainly deserving of a presentation to the City Council of these incidents with regards to what it can do, what it did, what the outcomes were, and how it saved lives of the suspects and or the officers in its deployment. I think it's impressive the way it's been used here, and I think that they should know how we're using this and what an asset it's become since it's been here.
Yes, sir. And to your point, it's an asset, but accolades also to the operators. You know, the asset doesn't move without the operator behind it. And as you point out, there were instances where the operator took advantage of certain circumstances. For instance, in the bus incident, where he took advantage of the suspect moving momentarily to place the QUGV between the suspect and the abandoned firearm to hopefully keep him from being able to repossess that handgun. And that was successful. That did resolve.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shields.
Thank you. And question about, from the last presentation, we talked about the working group which I will also invite myself to join. Is there also any discussion kind of holistically of using all of these tools or potentially expanding them in addition to like both drones and also the quadruped unmanned ground vehicle?
We haven't specifically moved on to the QUGV yet. I think those of us that are aware of its capabilities, similar to the drones, I think we would look forward to an expansion of its potential use. Currently policy allows it in a good series of scenarios. It just is most frequently the SWAT type scenarios, but it does permit us to deploy it into a hazardous materials type environment or a search and rescue type environment where perhaps the confines are too risky to send in an officer or too limited to send in a human being. But we would certainly, technology is the future, is a good tool and will continue to develop, and our consideration for expansion in its uses needs to grow as well.
Yeah, and maybe it stays the same, but at the same time, as long as we're looking at these kind of holistically, it would make sense to see all of the different tools that are available and determine how best to kind of thoughtfully and intentionally expand in order to prepare for future events.
And I think, even though it wasn't, flown, the SUAS drone consideration, when it was given outside of current policy up to the level of this board for use in the towers incident, I think that at least opened our eyes and to the possibility that in that very unique, unforeseen circumstance where this does become the best tool, but is outside current policy allowances, that we need to push that up to those levels to potentially use that under those exigent circumstances.
Thank you, Vice President Shields. Commissioner Calanche. Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Same, just thank you for this and echo the statements. I would want to see how we can potentially grow the uses of it and expand it, and again, in a thoughtful way. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So thanks again. I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report, transmit to City Council. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Commander. The commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A, B, and C, and item number 6 in accordance to Government Code 54957.
Good afternoon. The commission will now resume our session. Closed session has been completed, and we'll have a report out by Ms. Farber.
20th, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 4-0 vote. Law enforcement related injury number 44-23, 4 tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3, 4 police officer 2s, for drawing and exhibiting in policy no further action, 1 police officer 3, 4 police officer 2s. For intermediate force in policy no further action, 1 police officer 2. Additionally, the board made the following findings by a 4-0 vote. OIS number 45-23, 4 tactics, tactical debrief, 2 police officer 2s. For drawing, exhibiting in policy no further action, 2 police officer 2s. For lethal use of force in policy no further action, 2 police officers 2s. The board also made the following findings by a 4-0 vote. OIS animal number 047-23, 4 tactics, administrative disapproval, 2 police officer 2s. For drawing, exhibiting in policy no further action, 1 police officer 2. For lethal use of force in policy no further action, 1 police officer 2. For For closed session, item 4B1 discussed, and closed session, item 4C1 discuss. I've completed the closed session report.
Thank you. I move that today's meeting be adjourned. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
I would nominate President Errol Southers.
Commissioner Southers is nominated. Is there a second for this nomination?
Second.
Are there any other nominations for president? No other nominations for president. Those in favor of closing nominations say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it by a unanimous vote, and motion to close nominations for the office of president is carried. Those in favor of electing Commissioner Southers as president say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
The ayes have it by a unanimous vote. Congratulations, President Southers.
Thank you.
Nominations for the office of vice president are now in order. Are there any nominations?
I want to nominate by Commissioner Shields.
Commissioner Shields is nominated. Is there a second for this nomination?
Second.
Are there any other nominations for vice president? No, there are none. Is there a motion to close the nominations for vice president?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor of closing nominations say aye. Those opposing say no.
Aye.
The ayes have it by unanimous vote, and the motion to close nominations for the office of vice president is carried. Those in favor of electing Commissioner Shields for the office of vice president say aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
The ayes have it by unanimous vote. Congratulations, Vice President Shields.
Yay.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that the meeting be adjourned. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.